that have been passed. And basically, what's happened was, after all this year of all the blackouts and all that we've all endured, our Democrat majority in Lansing have actually passed laws to make electricity less reliable and more expensive. So we got Jason Hayes here from the Mackinac Center, and he is the Director of Energy and Environmental Policy. And Jason has quite a background. He was actually a ranger in British Columbia. Like, I used to watch Dudley Do-Right when I was a kid. So he even kind of looks like Dudley Do-Right, you'll see. He's got a master's in environmental design. He's got a degree in Calgary on natural resources. And he also serves as on the adjunct facility manager of Northwood University. He's got a lot of background in environmental sciences. So Jason, come on up. He's got this is why we got a little delayed. I was having trouble getting his PowerPoint going on my computer. So he's going to unplug my computer here and plug in his, and hopefully we'll get his PowerPoint going. But I would like to say something about the Mackinac Center. If anybody's not familiar with it, it is a great operation. They provide a lot of research, and they really cut through the nonsense. So anyway, you got that working, Jason?
I hope so.
Hey, if you can be like Dudley Do-Right, you can get it all working. Jason Hayes, everybody. Thank you.
Dudley was clean-shaven, so I'm not. Dudley was also a Mountie, so he was part of the law enforcement. When I was a backcountry ranger, I did count as a law enforcement officer, though. So what I'm here today to talk about is give you kind of a spoiler alert. The reality is that the energy bills that were passed in Lansing last year won't work. They failed the test, and so we'll look at the test that I'm trying to work with. If I can we're talking about. Here we go. Okay, so the stuff that I will talk about here today is the energy policies. 7 principles of sound energy policy. We'll look at, this thing's hiding behind, what can we expect if we as we start to implement?
Can you take the microphone off? Can you take the microphone?
Yeah. That'll be easier. Okay, yes, I will also do that here. I'll do this because inevitably, as I'm walking up, my wife reminded me that I did not shut the screen protector off. So I'll stand here and I'll switch the slides like this. So we'll look at what we can expect from the energy bills that have been passed, and then I will look at 4 sound energy policies that are based in the 7 principles. So before I start, what I want you to understand is, from a mind much better than mine, Thomas Sowell. Sowell said in his book, A Conflict of Visions, when you're dealing with public policy, you need to remember that a lot of the time there are no solutions to the issues that we're facing. There are only trade-offs. And so the better educated you get on issues like this, the better able you are to make decisions about these trade-offs. And so the policies that have been passed, I argue, are not good options, and they will cause problems for us. But if you look at Senate Bill 271, which was signed by the governor in November, is now Public Act 235. It will require us to get 60% of our electricity from renewable sources. Essentially, that means wind and solar by 2035. So we have to 4 times, like 4x, our current supply in the next just over a decade. By 2040, we have to have 100% what they called clean energy in the legislation. That allows nuclear and natural gas with 90% carbon capture. And people will think, well, good, we still have natural gas, right? Okay, 90% carbon capture has never been demonstrated anywhere on the planet. So effectively, by putting that in, they made sure that we cannot use natural gas going forward.
Wow.
So nuclear is a clean energy source, good for us. We should be using more nuclear, but natural gas will effectively be left out. The distributed generation cap, which means if you have basically solar panels on your home, that can go from 1% of a utility's retail supply to 10%, which means basically you guys in the room are subsidizing everybody who has solar panels on their roof. And then after 2035, you will not be allowed to purchase renewable energy credits. We will have to actually produce 60% of our electricity with wind and solar going forward. So anyway, I can see it from here, so we're good. But Senate Bill 273 is related to energy waste reduction programs. Essentially, it means utilities need to sell less electricity every year. So they have to, by 1.5%, improve their energy waste reduction, which means they need to reduce the load that they're serving to their customers. That's the electricity they supply to you. Also, any utility that has more than 50,000 customers must, according to this legislation, hire a diverse energy waste reduction workforce. So I'll leave that to you to decide what diverse energy waste reduction, because they don't define it in the bill.
Wow.
So Senate Bill 277, for any of you that are interested in farmland, there was a Public Act 116, that was set out to help protect farmland in the state of Michigan. And basically what it did is it gave tax credits to farmers to ensure that we retained land as farm in the state of Michigan. Okay, Senate Bill 277, now Public Act 230, allows that farmland that had been set aside and given special tax credits to set it aside. You are now allowed to develop that as a solar facility and keep it that way for up to 90 years. So you won't be using it for farmland, and but as an aside, you can't claim the tax credits while it's a solar facility. And if and when you decide to return it, like to stop getting this Public Act 230 credit, you need to return it to productive agriculture use within the next season. Okay, and the last one on my list, House Bill 5120. I will cover this very briefly because that's Kevin's topic. It basically takes control away from siting decisions, takes control away from townships and counties, and gives it to the Michigan Public Service Commission. So at the state level, they will be making decisions on what goes into your backyard from here on out. If, for example, your township councilors or commissioners disagree and say we don't want wind and solar, it does not matter. The MPSC gets final say. You do not. So again, Kevin will discuss more of this in his. So we're doing all of this ostensibly because what we want to do is reach net zero CO2 emissions. We're concerned about climate change, right? Okay?
Yes. No. No, we're not.
The state claims.
So we need to fix that.
Right, so the state claims that some of us are concerned about climate change. I'm not part of that group. If Michigan achieves its CO2 reduction goals and by 2040, 2050 gets to net zero, we will, in terms of world average temperatures, reduce world average temperature by 1/1000th of a degree Celsius. That's our input. So what that means is, if you go out, look out your kitchen window, and you look at the thermometer on your back deck, and you see in May, it's 70 degrees, okay? In 75 years, when your kids or grandkids or great-grandkids go out and look at the same thermometer, that's what they will see, 70 degrees. There is not a thermometer on the planet that can accurately measure 1/1000th of a degree Celsius difference. You will not see a difference based on this change. Something else, I was trained as a forester. One of the things that I worked at If you understand plant physiology, if you understand dendrology, how plants grow, what they need, if you even studied basic science as a kid in grade school, you understand that plants respire, they breathe in CO2, and they exhale or expire O2, right? You understand this. CO2 is plant food.
Grow more trees.
Exactly, because then we can make more paper and good stuff like that. Okay, now we're having troubles. Okay, so anyway, we've been having troubles with our internet all day long. But essentially what this was a picture of a newspaper in Ohio that was saying there's a growing backlash to the presence of wind and solar. So as people see more and more wind and solar come into their life, they're starting to say, hang on, we don't actually want this stuff. So the reason why that backlash is happening is because Michigan, the entire country actually, but Michigan is not following some basic energy policy principles. So those principles are the 7 principles that I talked about. The first one is that energy is an essential aspect of human flourishing. So energy is directly tied. If you have access to abundant, affordable, reliable energy, you will live a better quality of life, you will be more economically prosperous, and you will, despite what some in the green movement say, have a cleaner environment. The very wealthy, energy-rich countries tend to have very clean air and very clean water, like the United States. Okay? Proof of that exists in, if you look at the night sky of almost any wealthy, developed nation, you will see this sort of thing. The lights are on. Okay? Look over North America, you'll see this. Look over North Korea, and you see a very different thing. Compare South Korea. The Republic of South Korea is one of the most technologically advanced, wealthy countries on the face of the planet. Look at their night sky. That's the bottom left hand of this picture. Compare that to North Korea. North Koreans are not allowed to have access to abundant, affordable, reliable electricity. And when it goes dark at night, the country goes dark. The only place there that has lights on is Pyongyang, their capital city. The rest of the country sits in the dark. So what you often won't hear from the elected officials, the green movement, that sort of thing, is that as we continue to shut down reliable, affordable forms of electricity generation, our prices are going up and the reliability of our electric service is going down. So they tell you, though, that they're doing this for, right? It's all for the greater good. We're doing this on purpose. But remember, all sources of energy have some form of impact, environmental or other. So you will see the big utilities saying things like they're implementing these new programs, like they're building wind and solar. They're putting in time of day rates, peak rates, those kind of things are coming in. They're doing it, they recognize, some places the rates are going to go up, but we're doing it to help the environment, right? That's why this is important. We're protecting the environment. When I go through this, I don't bother explaining a lot of the time the environmental impacts of natural gas, coal, and nuclear, because you will hear that over and over and over again in the movies, in the newspapers, on TV, from your kids, from your grandkids. They're getting it at school. You're already hearing all the bad parts about fossil fuels and nuclear. So what I'll do is I'll give you some of the impacts of wind and solar, because you're told we're building these to protect the environment, right? Okay, but the reality is, if you look at these pictures at 12 o'clock, you see the examples of what happens to birds. Birds, bats, myota species, and insects are being killed by the millions by the wind turbines that we're building. So the next one at about 11 o'clock is a picture of a front-end loader picking up 300 to 500-year-old Joshua trees in California that they just cut down. They clear cut that and then threw them through a chipper. That big green pile in the front is a chipper. That used to be 500-year-old Joshua trees. Okay? They're clearing that out to clear space for solar. So we're destroying the environment to protect the environment. We're helping the environment, right? Okay, so the next one, I'm losing, again, we're losing connectivity here. I'm losing some of my pictures. But the other two, at 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock, are pictures that will give you some idea about the other impacts, the human rights impacts and the labor impacts. So nowhere in North America could you be mining for minerals and forcing 7-year-old kids to do the work. Okay, but they do that in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to get the cobalt that we need to build the batteries for the EVs and the utility battery backup. Okay, so you have literally 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids standing in what is toxic waste. It's mining, it's leachate from mining that they've been doing. And these kids are by hand, without protective equipment, going through and cleaning out the cobalt minerals that we need to build the EVs so that we can tell ourselves that we're using green energy. Okay? Same thing down in the bottom left-hand corner. You have a picture of just a small portion of the 2 million Uyghurs that have been put into what the Chinese government calls education facilities. But if you look off over on the side, you can see 16, 20-foot barbed wire fences. And also in this picture, you can see armed guards standing outside the fences. If they just don't volunteer for work one day, people in their family go missing. But they're forced to go, they're educated to go and build solar components that we then import into North America so we can call ourselves green. Okay? It's slavery. That's what's happening. That's what's building 45% of the world's supply of polysilicon. So the reality is that green energy is not green. Let that sink in. Mark Mills from the Manhattan Institute wrote in the Wall Street Journal that building one wind turbine, requires 900 tons of steel, 2,500 tons of cement, and 45 tons of non-recyclable plastics. Okay, wind, that's for wind. Solar uses even more metal, cement, and glass to produce. So green energy isn't green. And so I point out that problem with solar. People say, yeah, but what about wind? Okay. Darn it, we keep losing our pictures here. It's a really good picture. The picture is, on the front of the magazine, is a picture of a wind turbine dripping oil off the blades of the turbine, because Vaclav Smil, who's an emeritus prof in public policy at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Okay, Vaclav Smil has written more books than a lot of people have read. Okay, the guy is prolific. He has explained that at every step of manufacture, development first to get the minerals and all of that out of the ground, manufacturing, transportation, construction and operation, every step of the use of wind turbines, you need fossil fuels. Without fossil fuels, you do not have wind turbines. Think of the plastics and the epoxies and all that sort of stuff that go into the blades, refining the metal, all of that. If you don't have fossil fuels, you do not have wind turbines. So, like Smil says, wind turbines are the pure embodiment of fossil fuels.
And they're only good for 15 years.
And 10 in a lot of areas. 10 years is when the production tax credit runs out. So that's when they're repowering wind turbines, because if you repower wind turbines at 10 years, you start the production tax credit again. So they're not even lasting 15 years a lot of the time. And
Non-biodegradable, and they bury them.
right, that's coming here. So if the picture works. But the reality is that in energy production, there's a lot of people in the US, 330 million people in the country, all using electricity 24/7. It's a big system, and so scale is king. Darn it, this is, okay. I'm losing all my pictures. But anyway, this is a picture of the Carroll Road Solar Farm that was proposed to be built right in the area where Kevin lives, down in the southeast corner of the state. So this solar farm that was proposed, it has been canceled because the people in the area stood up and said, no, thank you, we don't need it. It would have taken up to 1,600 acres of some of the state's most productive farmland. And so whenever I show, normally the picture shows, but whenever I show the picture, I always say, but so what if we cover up our farmland, right? It's not like we use it to grow our food or anything.
Nothing like that.
Right, nothing important like that. So, darn it, all of my pictures are not showing up. Anyway, somebody else already brought this up, but what I'll do is I'll make sure that the pictures work, and I will send the PDF to Matt, and you guys can have the slides with pictures intact after. But basically what this slide shows is there is a picture of a landfill in Wyoming. And there's, on the picture, if you look real close, there's a small little D9 cat. And if any of you have stood around a D9 caterpillar, you know it's not small like this. But in the picture it is. The rest of the picture is wind turbine blades that have been all hacked up and stuffed together. 300 wind turbine blades take up the entire picture compared to a D9 cat that's that big. Okay, that's 200 to 300 wind turbine blades. But if you look at the federal government data, they say that in January last year, January 2023, we had over 70,000 wind turbine blades operating in 1,500 different facilities across the country. So if 300 wind turbine blades take up an entire picture when a D9 cat is that big in the picture, what does 70,000 look like? Because all we're doing right now, we can't afford to recycle them. That ups the price for wind a lot because you have to ship them and that. All we're doing is landfilling them. Okay, that should be a problem as far as people are concerned. Yeah, this is getting to be troublesome here. I'm not sure if I can switch over to the PDF actually. Sorry, I'll switch over quickly. We'll work on the fly here. Deal with me so that you guys can see these pictures. You'll get to see if.
It tells 1,000 words.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do it. This is showing it. Okay. There was the first one. Okay, the one that we missed here. Actually, this one's important because the picture of the roof with the words behind it, it says solar panels are starting to die and leaving behind toxic trash. Okay. The National Renewable Energy Laboratories put out a study just recently and said that by 2050 we will have 80 million metric tons of solar e-waste piling up in this across the world. And every year we will be adding another 6 million metric tons of solar e-waste that, like they're saying, is starting to leave behind toxic trash. That's true because the toxic trash that's left behind, these solar panels use in them all of the things that if they came from coal ash, the environmental groups would be up in arms. Selenium, lead, arsenic, all of these things when they go into a landfill can leach out of the solar panels in under 6 months. So that's what we're seeing on these. So there's the picture of Vaclav Smil's wind turbine, what he sees. And that's the Carroll Road Solar Farm. This would have been, again, it's right in the back, Kevin's backyard, but this is what these farms will look like. No longer producing corn, soybeans, any of those things that we use. There's the landfill picture, and to help you understand, there is the D9 cat right there. So compare the size of a D9 cat to the wind turbine blades. That's what you're getting to deal with. Okay, so the Palisades nuclear plant. That was closed down in May 2022 to replace just the capacity, not the service, just the capacity of that one nuclear plant would take 1,400 new wind turbines.
What?
Across the state, right now, there's just over 1,500 wind turbines operating. So we would need to, just to replace the capacity of that one plant, rebuild the entire state's wind fleet. Okay. When I talk about reliability and that sort of thing, it's important to understand that that one nuclear plant, which is now closed, trying to get it reopened, but it's closed right now. In 2021, that nuclear plant produced more electricity than all the state's wind and solar combined. One nuclear plant.
24 hours.
24 hours a day, yes. It runs nonstop. So what I say is that energy has to be reliable to be truly effective. James Schlesinger, who was Carter's Secretary of Energy in 1977, when he discussed energy, he pointed out that the American people have two modes when it comes to electricity or energy. We either have complacency or panic. We either don't care because, yeah, when I flick the switch, the lights come on, or we freak out, the power's out, and something needs to be done right now. We're getting closer to just a general attitude of panic all the time. Because when you talk to the officials that are responsible for running the grid, the North American Electric Grid, Jim Robb, CEO of the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, explained that we're closing down the big reliable plants too quickly and we're trying to replace it with wind and solar. We're pushing a false idea of environmental impact. We're trying to reduce environmental impact and we're forgetting about reliability and affordability. Todd Ramey, who's one of the senior vice presidents at the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, that's the regional grid operator in which Michigan sits. We're in MISO's grid. He said that controllable, dispatchable resources, coal and nuclear and natural gas, are being retired and replaced primarily with weather-dependent, non-dispatchable and variable sources, wind and solar. We're doing it to achieve carbon reduction. Okay, we understand that's our goal, but the weather-dependent generators are increasing reliability risks. So we're hearing this over and over again. The job of guys like Todd Ramey and Jim Robb is to make sure our grid operates reliably. That's what they're telling us. Okay? And I think I'm running short of time. Okay. So basically, we're seeing these reliability problems all over North America. We saw it just a few weeks ago in Oahu. They did rolling blackouts. Province of Alberta, same thing. They were putting out emergency warnings. Texas, once again, putting out emergency warnings. We saw the same thing in Michigan in January 2019. Everybody got the text message, please turn your thermostats down to 65 degrees or less. When we got that, the things that were keeping our power on, coal, natural gas, and nuclear. Those are the ones we're trying to shut down. We're being told by industry journals that if we're going to do this, industry is going to have to learn to work around the weather. We don't get to do 3 8-hour shifts anymore. We get to produce products when the weather cooperates. Okay, we've been trying to change our system for over 40, 50 years. Carter was the first one to put solar panels on the White House. Okay, still, despite that effort, wind and solar only provide just over 5% of our primary energy demand. Even the news admits there is no transition. Growth of energy overall is growing faster than our ability to produce more wind and solar. Okay? You have to have affordable energy, but unreliable energy is not affordable. Michigan already has the most expensive electric rates in the entire region, and the idea that wind and solar, we don't pay fuel costs, does not matter because you have to pay for backup, transmission, and other construction related to energy resources. So the problems that we're having are being caused by subsidies. So if you look at the total subsidies that were given out over the past decade to the different energy sources, Wind and solar, 5% of our energy supply, more than half of the subsidies. The other 95% got less than half of the subsidies. And when you subsidize bad decisions, you get more bad decisions. Michigan has terrible solar irradiance levels, the fourth worst in the lower 48. You've all lived through a winter here. You know what it's like. It's cloudy. Same sort of thing with wind. We have bad wind resources. If you want to build wind, build it in the Great Plains states. That's where you get wind. So what can we expect as we move forward?
Rolling blackouts.
That's what you can expect. So you'll see inefficient supply, soaring costs. They'll get clever names like demand response and load shedding, but the governor's net zero plans will lead to electricity shortages. Okay? They're going to try to incentivize it. The utilities will put surcharges on your utility bill, and then they will hand out things like, oh, well, you get a free thermostat. You'll get subsidized solar panels and that sort of thing. Other things like energy assistance programs, those are going to go up. When that doesn't work, you'll get those urgent calls for conservation measures, okay? Limit your air conditioner. Don't run your air conditioning. Don't run your stove. Don't charge your EV. Don't do all of those things. When that doesn't work, you will get blackouts, load shedding, and that sort of thing. So, does the legislation pass the 7 principles test? In a word, no. It fails on every single count. So the 4 policies that I suggest focus on reliability, affordability, and flexibility. Get energy sources that work even when the sun doesn't shine. That's important. The second one, stop subsidizing all forms of energy. Let energy companies compete on a level, open, transparent playground. Retain our generation systems for their full life cycle. Don't shut them down 15, 20 years early. Build natural gas and legalize nuclear. So those 4 pass all of the 7 tests, and that's how you can get a hold of me if you need me. So,
Jason Hayes, thank you so much.